You're in a calorie deficit. You're tracking your food. You might even be hitting your macros. And you're still not losing fat the way you expected. So what happens? You stay on track for a few days. Then by Thursday night, you're standing in the kitchen, eating peanut butter straight out of the jar, wondering what went wrong. Let me tell you something clearly. You don't lack discipline. Your strategy is broken. And I can prove it. Because there's one thing that the leanest, most consistent people do with their nutrition that almost nobody talks about. It's not a supplement, it's not a hack, it's a structural shift in how you build every single meal. And once I explain it, you'll realize it fixes your hunger, your cravings, your energy crashes, and your late night overeating. All of it at the same time. But first, I need to show you exactly why your current approach is setting you up to fail. Because if you skip that part, the strategy won't stick. Most people treat fat loss like a math equation. Calories in, calories out, done. And technically, yeah, the math matters. But the strategy behind how you eat, what you prioritize, the order you eat it in, the structure of your actual meals, that's what separates people who white-knuckle through a diet for 6 weeks and quit from people who get lean and stay lean without it feeling like punishment. There's one eating strategy that fixes about 80% of the problems people hit during a fat loss phase. It's not keto, it's not intermittent fasting, it's not starving yourself all week just to binge on the weekend. It's simpler than all of that, and it works better for most people than any of them. In this video, I'm going to break down the single most effective eating strategy for fast, sustainable fat loss. I'll explain why it works on a physiological level, how to actually set it up in your real life, and the mistakes that quietly sabotage people who think they're already doing it right. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right, but your body isn't responding, this is probably the missing piece. Let's zoom out. When someone says they want to lose fat fast, what they really mean is, I want to lose body fat, keep the muscle I have, and see visible progress within a few weeks. That's a reasonable goal. But the way most people go about it creates 3 problems almost immediately. Problem 1, they slash calories too hard, too fast. They go from 2,500 calories down to 1,600 overnight. And for a week or two, it works. The scale drops, they feel motivated. But then the body catches up, energy crashes, workouts get worse, they start losing muscle, hunger becomes constant, and eventually, they either binge or just quietly give up. Problem 2, they focus on restriction instead of composition. They think about what they can't eat instead of what they should be eating, so their diet ends up low in protein, low in fiber, low in the stuff that actually keeps them full and functioning, and high in willpower debt. Problem 3, they have no structure. Every meal is a freestyle decision made on the fly, which means every meal is a willpower test. And here's the thing. Hungry you is not logical. Hungry you will destroy your plan every single time. Willpower is a terrible fat loss strategy because it runs out. So what actually decides if you succeed? It's not whether you know what to eat. It's this: can you stay consistent when you're hungry, tired, and busy? Because that's where every diet either holds or collapses. The strategy that fixes all 3 of these problems at once is something I call protein-first eating. Not a diet, not a meal plan, a decision-making framework that makes fat loss almost automatic once you lock it in. Now, before you think, I already eat protein, stay with me, because I'm about to show you a specific number that tells you exactly how much protein you actually need. A meal-by-meal breakdown most coaches charge money for, and a mistake in Section 5 that I guarantee you're making right now. If you leave before that part, you'll keep spinning your wheels. So let's get into it. Here's the concept in one sentence. At every single meal and snack, protein is the first thing you plan, the first thing on your plate, and the first thing you eat. That's it. That's the strategy. But don't let the simplicity fool you. The downstream effects of this one shift are massive. Let me explain why. When protein leads every eating decision, 3 things happen automatically. First, it kills hunger. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient we have. Gram for gram, it keeps you fuller for longer than carbs or fats. This isn't a theory, it's basic physiology. Protein triggers the release of satiety hormones like peptide YY and GLP-1, while simultaneously suppressing ghrelin, your body's primary hunger hormone. So you naturally eat less at each meal without feeling deprived. Compare that to what most people eat. Small, low-protein, low-volume meals. Their stomach stays physically empty, their hunger hormones spike, their brain thinks they're starving. So now they've got high hunger, low satisfaction, and zero control. They're trying to beat biology with willpower. That's a losing game. Second, it burns more calories during digestion. This is called the thermic effect of food. When you eat protein, your body uses about 20 to 30% of those calories just to break it down and absorb it. Compare that to carbs at 5 to 10% and fats at basically 0 to 3%. So if you eat 200 calories of chicken breast, your body nets roughly 150 usable calories. Eat 200 calories of olive oil, and your body nets about 194. Same calories on the label, very different metabolic cost. Third, and this is especially important if you're training, high protein intake protects your muscle tissue during a deficit. When you're eating fewer calories than you burn, your body has to pull energy from somewhere. If protein is high enough, it pulls from fat stores. If it's too low, it starts pulling from muscle. And losing muscle during a cut is the fastest way to end up skinny fat instead of lean. Before we get into the practical setup, let's lock in the target, because eat more protein is vague, and vague advice gets vague results. For fat loss specifically, especially if you're doing any kind of resistance training, aim for around 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of your target body weight per day, not your current weight, your target weight. So if you weigh 200 pounds and want to get to 180, you're aiming for roughly 144 to 180 grams of protein per day. If that sounds like a lot, that's exactly the point. Most people who say they eat pretty healthy are getting maybe 60 to 80 grams a day. That's not high protein. That's barely maintenance for someone who doesn't exercise. And here's what happens when you actually hit that protein target consistently. A lot of your other macros fall into place on their own. You end up eating less junk by default because protein-rich foods tend to push out the hyperpalatable, calorie-dense stuff that was inflating your intake in the first place. The cookies and chips and random snacking don't disappear because you have more willpower. They disappear because you're not as hungry anymore. All right, so that's the protein side. But protein alone isn't the full strategy. There's a second piece that most people completely ignore, and it's the reason some people can eat in a deficit and feel fine, while others are white-knuckling it every single day. I'll explain that right now. And then after that, I'm going to walk you through the exact meal-by-meal framework: breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, so you can start using this tomorrow. Don't skip ahead though, because the order matters. The volume principle: why what you eat matters as much as how much. Now here's the second half of the strategy, and this is the part most people completely ignore. Your brain doesn't just track calories, it tracks physical volume, how much space food takes up in your stomach. That's why 500 calories of snacks leaves you hungry, but 500 calories of real food can keep you full for hours. Same calorie number on paper, completely different experience in your body. Think about it. A handful of cookies and a coffee, gone in 5 minutes, and you're hungry again in an hour. But a plate of grilled chicken, roasted potatoes, and a bowl of fruit, that stays with you. Same calories, wildly different satiety. This is because your stomach has stretch receptors. When it physically expands, it sends fullness signals to your brain. Foods that are high in volume relative to their calorie content, like potatoes, vegetables, fruit, oats, Greek yogurt, trigger those signals hard. Foods that are calorie dense but low volume, like nuts, oils, granola, dried fruit, barely register. So after you've anchored every meal with protein, the next priority is filling the rest of your plate with high-volume, nutrient-dense foods: potatoes, rice, fruit, vegetables, oats, yogurt. These are the foods that make a deficit feel like you're actually eating. Fat loss becomes dramatically easier when your meals actually feel like meals. Here's a detail most people miss entirely. It's not just about what you eat, it's about the order you eat it in. Research has shown that when you eat protein and vegetables before starches and sugars in a meal, your blood sugar response is significantly flatter. Less blood sugar spiking means less insulin spiking. Less insulin spiking means less energy crashing an hour later. And fewer energy crashes mean fewer cravings, less brain fog, and way fewer moments where you find yourself standing in front of the fridge at 3 p.m. with no plan and no willpower. Think about it like building a fire. Protein and fiber are the logs, slow-burning, long-lasting fuel. Simple carbs are the kindling. They flare up fast, and burn out fast. If you throw kindling on first with no logs, you get a quick flame and then nothing. But if you lay the logs down first, everything burns more evenly and lasts longer. So at every meal, eat your protein first, then your vegetables, then your carbs. It sounds almost too simple, but the difference in how you feel and how much you end up eating is noticeable within the first few days. Okay, now let me give you the part you can actually screenshot and use starting tomorrow. This is the meal-by-meal breakdown. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. What to prioritize, what to swap, and the exact protein targets for each one. This is the section that turns the concept into a system. Now let's make this real. Here's how protein-first eating works in practice, meal by meal. Step 1. Before you eat anything, ask one question. Where is the protein in this meal? Not after, not as a side thought, first. If you can't answer that question clearly, the meal isn't ready yet. This is the filter that changes everything. Breakfast. This is where most people fail hardest. Cereal, toast, oatmeal, a banana, a granola bar. These are all basically carbs with a protein cameo. A pastry and a coffee isn't a meal, it's a warm-up. A protein-first breakfast means starting with eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, a protein shake, or turkey sausage, something that puts you at 25 to 40 grams of protein before you even think about what goes with it. Instead of cereal, add protein-rich yogurt. Instead of plain toast, add eggs, then build from there. Lunch, same filter. Don't start with, I'll have a salad, and then figure out protein later. Start with, I need 40 grams of protein, and build the meal around that. Grilled chicken, tuna, salmon, ground turkey, tofu if you're plant-based. Then the vegetables, the grain, the dressing become supporting players, not the headliner. Dinner. This is usually where people do best because most dinner traditions already center around a protein source. But the mistake here is portion size. A piece of chicken the size of a deck of cards gives you maybe 20 grams. You probably need double that. So actually measure or eyeball your portions until you have a feel for it. Snacks. This is where the strategy makes its biggest difference. Most snack choices are carb and fat bombs with almost no protein. And here's the truth. Snacking is usually what creates chaos. A meal creates control. Snacking creates noise. So swap the usual suspects for jerky, string cheese, protein bars that actually have protein in them, not the ones with 12 grams of protein and 30 grams of sugar. Hard-boiled eggs, Greek yogurt, or a quick shake. Every snack should have at least 15 grams of protein, non-negotiable. Let's talk implementation, because knowing the strategy is useless if you can't run it in real life. Protein target. Calculate 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of your goal body weight. Write that number down. That's your daily North Star. Everything else is secondary. Meal distribution. Spread your protein across 3 to 4 structured meals per day. Don't try to cram it all into 1 or 2 sittings. Your body can only use so much protein at once for muscle protein synthesis. Roughly 40 to 60 grams per meal is the practical ceiling. So if your target is 160 grams per day, aim for roughly 40 grams at each of 4 meals. Structure matters. Don't eat randomly. Don't skip breakfast and snack all day and overeat at night. That creates chaos. 3 to 4 structured meals. Each one starts with protein. Each one built for fullness. Because when you have a plan, you don't need willpower. The decision is already made. Meal prep. Pick 2 to 3 protein sources you actually enjoy and prep them in bulk twice a week. Sunday and Wednesday works for most people. Grill a batch of chicken, cook some ground turkey, hard boil a dozen eggs. Make it easy to execute so the decision is already made when it's time to eat. Tracking. For the first 2 to 3 weeks, track your protein intake and only your protein intake. Don't worry about carbs, fats, or total calories yet. Just get the protein number right consistently. You'll be amazed at how much your overall intake self-corrects once protein is locked in. Calorie check. After 2 to 3 weeks of consistent protein-first eating, check your average calorie intake. If you're losing about 1 to 1.5 pounds per week, you're in a good spot. If not, now you can make small adjustments to carbs or fats, but the protein stays fixed. It's the last thing you cut, ever. Training. Pair this with resistance training 3 to 5 days per week. Protein-first eating without training is still effective for fat loss, but it won't give you the body composition changes you're probably after. You need the training stimulus to tell your body, keep the muscle, burn the fat. And one more thing, you don't need a perfect diet. You need a repeatable one. 5 to 8 meals you can rotate. Simple, predictable, effective. Because fat loss isn't about perfection, it's about consistency. Now, before you go try this, I need you to hear the next part, because there are 5 mistakes that silently destroy this strategy for people who think they're doing everything right. Number 3 alone is probably costing you a pound of fat loss per week, and you don't even realize it. Let me walk through all 5, where people quietly sabotage themselves. Alright, let's talk about the mistakes, because I see all of these constantly, and they're the reason smart people still struggle with fat loss. Mistake 1. Thinking you're eating enough protein when you're not. This is the biggest one by far. People dramatically overestimate their protein intake. They'll say, I eat a lot of protein, and then when they actually track it for a few days, they're at 70 grams. 70 grams isn't high protein. Track it honestly for 1 week. The number will probably surprise you. Mistake 2. Counting total protein instead of quality protein. That protein bar with 20 grams of protein, but also 35 grams of carbs and 15 grams of fat, that's a candy bar with a marketing budget. Real protein sources are foods where protein is the primary macronutrient. Chicken, fish, eggs, Greek yogurt, whey protein, lean beef. Foods where most of the calories actually come from protein. Mistake 3. Ignoring hidden calories that don't fill you. Most people say, I don't eat that much, but they drink liquid calories. They graze on snacks. These don't fill you, but they add up fast. A meal creates control. Random snacking creates chaos. Know the difference. Mistake 4. Skipping breakfast protein and trying to make it up later. If you start the day with coffee and a muffin, you've already put yourself in a deficit of the wrong kind, a protein deficit. You'll be playing catch up all day, which usually means overeating at night. Front load your protein. Win the morning, and the rest of the day gets dramatically easier. Mistake 5. Going too aggressive on the calorie deficit. Protein first eating works because it lets you eat in a moderate deficit comfortably. If you're also slashing calories to 1,200 a day, you're going to be miserable no matter what you eat. The strategy only works if the deficit is sustainable. Aim for 300 to 500 calories below maintenance. That's it. Faster is not better if it's not maintainable. If you remember one thing from this video, remember this: protein first, volume second, structure always. At every meal, protein is planned first, plated first, and eaten first. You aim for 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of goal body weight, spread across 3 to 4 meals a day. You fill the rest of your plate with high-volume foods that actually keep you full. You prep in advance. You track protein for the first few weeks until it becomes automatic. This one shift increases satiety so you naturally eat less. It boosts your metabolic rate through the thermic effect of food. It protects your muscle mass during a deficit. It stabilizes your blood sugar so cravings and energy crashes stop running your day. And it gives every meal a clear structure so you stop relying on willpower and start relying on a system. It's not sexy, it's not complicated, but it is the single highest leverage change you can make to your nutrition if your goal is losing fat without losing your mind. If this video clarified something you've been getting wrong, or if you're going to try protein-first eating starting this week, drop a comment and tell me your current daily protein target. I read every single one. If you want me to break this into a full weekly meal plan with exact foods, portions, and simple setups, let me know in the comments. That can be the next video. Hit subscribe if you want more training and nutrition content that actually makes sense and skips the fluff. And if you know someone stuck in a fat loss plateau, send them this video. Sometimes one shift is all it takes. I'll see you in the next one.